He simply helped a stranger with her car on a country road, no name, no questions asked. But the next morning, black SUVs pulled up to his house. You won't believe how this ordinary act of kindness turned against him in the most unexpected way. Aaron woke up coughing. The air in the house was heavy, as if they had breathed in everything possible during the night, him, the old mattress, and Buzz, the dog, who snored so loudly that it sounded like cement bags were being torn open somewhere in the corner. It was close to 8 o'clock, but the sun was already beating down on the windows, as if trying to force him out of this box. He sat on the edge of the bed, rubbed his face, and stared at the wall. Where his son's photo used to hang, there was now a light spot. He had taken the photo down long ago, after the trial. Not because he didn't love him, on the contrary. It was just that looking at it was more painful than remembering. In the kitchen, peeling tiles, a single cracked mug, a jar of instant coffee with a spoon sticking out of it. He poured water into the electric kettle and glanced at the refrigerator. The light was on, which meant the power hadn't been cut off. That was good. Buzz scratched at the door. He always waited for Aaron to get up first. The dog was old and decrepit, like the shed behind the house, but stubborn. Dogs live more honestly in general, they love while they can and don't ask questions. Aaron went out onto the porch. The air was thick and dusty. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled, or so it seemed to him. He sat down on the step and lit a cigarette. The cigarettes in this house had run out a couple of years ago, but the habit remained, bringing his empty hand to his lips, inhaling nothing. Some people drink, some people shoot up, he just breathes fiction. And then, a noise. Not just noise, but the characteristic wheeze of an overheated, suffocating engine. From the road where a maximum of 2 farmers passed by each month. He stood up and looked closely. A white pickup truck, swaying like a drunk. The muffler was torn off or simply dead. The car stopped in a cloud of dust, 20 meters from the house. A woman got out of the cab. She was short, wearing a long t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers, dust clogging the crevices of her clothes, her face glistening from the heat. She looked around, as if searching for someone, a stranger. And met his gaze. Aaron didn't move. He just stared. Do you have a workshop here? Her voice trembled. Not from fear, but rather from exhaustion. He nodded. It wasn't a workshop, of course, but a shed where he used to repair his Impala. Now they were sawing boards there, and the California sun was baking the iron white. The car, overheated. The radiator, I think. I don't understand anything, she pointed to the hood. Would it be difficult for you to take a look? Aaron didn't answer. He just walked around her, as if it weren't a conversation, but a radio broadcast in the background. He walked over to the hood and opened it. Steam hit his face. The antifreeze had already leaked out, the system was dry. He spat and wiped his hands on his jeans. Are the keys in the car? Yes. He turned on the ignition, checked the pump, and glanced at the hoses. Everything was flimsy, everything was falling apart. He had seen cars like this hundreds of times. Sometimes it wasn't even worth repairing, it was easier to burn it and walk. But he wasn't the type to give up. While he was poking around, the woman sat down on a log by the road, hugging her knees. Buzz ran up to her and buried his nose in her palm. She ran her hand over his head, and then, for the first time, she smiled. It was difficult, as if she had forgotten how to do it. You have a good dog. Better than people, Aaron said without looking up. She fell silent. He didn't know who she was. And he didn't ask. Names weren't needed in this place. There were too many memories here as it was. She was silent. Not out of politeness, it was just obvious that she was tired of talking. Aaron respected that. Tired silences are the most honest. They demand nothing in return. He turned the yoke, pulled the hose, poured water. He did everything calmly, from memory. His hands were black with dirt, his nails long unwashed. But inside, there was silence. He had long since gotten used to it, the fewer words, the more work. While he worked, he watched her out of the corner of his eye. The woman was looking into the distance, squinting against the sun. There was no restlessness in her face, there was tension, like that of an animal waiting for something to happen. It wasn't anxiety, it was experience. "Have you been here long?" she asked suddenly, without turning around. He shrugged. Since there was no reason to leave. She turned to him, frowning, not out of incomprehension, but out of recognition. In her eyes was the same habit of solitude, only fresher, not yet dulled. "Is that your dog?" "My neighbor kicked it out. I picked it up. Since then, we've been snoring together." She grunted. She didn't laugh, she just responded. Sometimes even a warm response sounds like gratitude. "I'm going to Mexico City. My mother is there. She's in the hospital." "Well, it doesn't matter. I was in a hurry and took a wrong turn." "All roads lead past here," he replied. "I could have managed on my own, but I wouldn't have taken anything anyway." He closed the hood. He tapped the metal with his palm. "Now it'll run. But be careful, the hose is old, it's hanging on by a thread. And words are expensive these days." She got up. She went to the car and rummaged through her bag. She took out her wallet and held out a bill. He didn't take it. "No, why?" "Because if I start taking, then I'll start asking. And I was already falling for it." She pursed her lips and nodded. But it was clear that she felt uncomfortable. She wasn't used to people like him. She didn't know how to behave around them. In a world where every service comes with a price tag, people like him seemed suspicious. "Then, can I just say thank you?" "You can. But it's better if you get there alive." She nodded. She started the engine. The pickup truck hummed as if it couldn't believe it was still alive. Dust swirled under the wheels as she turned around. He watched her go. The car disappeared behind the hill. And then there was only the road, the same as always, empty, hot, as if no one had ever driven on it. He stood there, looked at the horizon, then shouted, "Buzz! Let's go!" The dog did not respond. He was already lying on the porch, breathing heavily. The heat squeezed everything, the ground, the air, the bones. Aaron returned to the house. He sat down at the table. Everything was the same, empty. A chair, an ashtray without ashes, a mug with the remains of cold coffee. Silence that did not drown out, but only emphasized every detail of life. And inside him, something barely audible. Not anxiety. Not pride. Just a faint ringing of memory. As if he had touched something he himself had long since buried. The house smelled of heat, wood, and rust. As if the building itself was held together not by nails, but by old smells. Aaron turned on the fan, it began to spit dust with a hum. He turned it off. He sat back down. On the table lay an old notebook, no dates, no system, with a cash register receipt as a bookmark. He had once used it to keep track of orders. Then he just wrote down names. Those who asked, those he didn't have time for, those he forgot. No last names, no phone numbers, just initials and short notes. Lara's son, the one with the broken arm, the teacher from Mariko. He leafed through it at random. The page was blank. And that was the right thing to do. He owed no one anything. And no one owed him anything. That's how he survived. Outside, the sun disappeared behind a cloud. It grew dark in the house. Silence, the kind that stretches out and seems to grip your throat. He got up, went to the sink, and splashed water on his face. He looked in the mirror and didn't recognize himself. It wasn't old age. Just a man who hadn't talked like a human being in too long. Buzz snored in his sleep and twitched his paw. Aaron sat down next to him and ran his hand through his fur. The dog growled briefly, approvingly. That snoring was the only thing that connected him to the rhythm of life. As long as Buzz was breathing, something in this house continued to move. An hour passed. Maybe 2. He didn't even notice. He just sat there, looking out the window. At the road that no one turns onto. Almost no one. And suddenly, the sound again. Thin, as if metallic. Something clicked. Then, silence. He got up and opened the door. No one was on the porch. The gate was empty. But there was a strange feeling in the air, as if someone had just been standing there. And left. But left no traces, except. Aaron bent down. Right on the railing, a thin scratch. It wasn't there in the morning. He knew that for sure. He ran his finger along the edge. It was fresh. Like it was made by a ring. Or a weapon. He didn't say anything. He just stepped back. Closed the door. Then he turned on the radio, a long-forgotten one with an antenna made from a coat hanger. He tuned in. Nothing. Just static. And then suddenly, a voice. Fragments of speech, a woman's voice, broken. If you hear this. I need, and then it cut off. He turned it off abruptly. He remained in silence. He stared at the floor. And for the first time in a long time, he felt truly cold. Morning did not come, it burst in. Without ceremony, without a bow. Like a knife that no one asked for. First, barking. Sharp, hysterical. Buzz howled like a siren, then darted to the door, then growled again. He hadn't done that since the lynx wandered onto the property. Aaron was already on his feet. His heart wasn't so much pounding as thumping, as if keeping time for someone else. He went to the window. And froze. 3 black SUVs. Identical, like clones. No license plates. Perfectly aligned at the entrance. As if with a ruler. Not dusty. Not road-worn. Not the kind that just drive around. A man got out of the front car. He was of average height, wearing a shirt, but with the gait of someone who knows the value of other people's silence. Behind him were 2 more. One stayed by the car, the other stood by the gate. Aaron didn't go out. He wasn't stupid. He just watched. Through the glass. Without moving. Inside, something was already trembling. Not fear. Habit. Someone knocked on the door. Not politely. Silently. 2 knocks, then a pause. Mr. Coleman. The voice was like a knife on glass. Not asking. Stating. He opened the door. Only halfway. Depends on who's asking. You had a woman here yesterday. White Ford Explorer. Medium height. Dark hair. You helped her with her car. Right? Aaron looked into his eyes. Gray, cold, glassy. I fixed it. I didn't take down her information. She didn't tell you anything. No names. Who are you that I should tell you anything? Silence. Then, we're the kind of people who don't like to repeat questions. And I'm the kind of person who doesn't like people coming into my yard uninvited. The man smiled. Not with his teeth, but with his eyes. Then let's take another approach. He entered without waiting for permission. The second followed him. The third remained outside. Buzz growled, but fell silent when he saw Aaron's gaze. They entered the house. Without haste. They looked around. Quiet, like those who seek not a thing, but a trace. One touched a photo in a frame with his finger. The second opened the refrigerator, as if looking for something more than food. "It's quiet here," said one. "That's because I don't invite people who talk loudly." "You didn't ask her who she was, did you? Do you often ask someone whose car has broken down their surname and privacy policy? Do you think it's that simple?" "I don't think. I fix." They exchanged glances. And that was the first crack. He didn't give them what they wanted. And they didn't know what to do with his silence. One took out a business card. Held it out. White. No name, no logo. Just a number. "If you remember anything, call me. This is not a request." And they left. Slowly. Calmly. With the feeling that they had left a bomb inside the house. They left as quietly as they had arrived. The engines blended into the heat, as if nothing had ever happened. Only the tire tracks in the dust and the business card, like a mockery, remained on the kitchen table. Aaron didn't touch it. He didn't even turn it over. He just stared at it. Like a snake's egg. Buzz lay down by the door again. But now he slept warily, his ears twitching at every sound, his breathing rapid and ragged. He could sense it. Dogs can always sense when fear enters the house. Aaron poured himself some water. He took a sip. Then another. Then he splashed it on his face. And looked out the window. Nothing. No cars, no dust. As if it had all been a ghost. But it wasn't a ghost. He took out an old shoebox. Inside was a folding knife that his son had once given him. And a gun. Without bullets. Empty, like everything else in this house. Just a gesture. Just a habit. If strangers appear in the house, you have to hold something in your hand, at least the illusion of power. He walked through the rooms. Checked the windows. The locks. Everything was in place. But he didn't feel like he was alone. Her bottle was left in the sink. The plastic was slightly crushed, with a lipstick mark on the neck. He didn't throw it away. Not out of sentimentality. Just as a marker. As proof that she had really been there. He sat down. He rested his elbows on his knees. His forehead was in his palms. Inside, there was a hum. Not thoughts. Just an inner itch that prevented him from breathing easily. "Why did you come, girl?" he said aloud. Not expecting an answer. He remembered her gaze. Tense. Not frightened, precisely measured. Like a person who is ready to run away at any moment. She was afraid. Not of the road, not of the breakdown. Someone. Or something. And now that someone was standing in his hallway, touching photographs, looking in the refrigerator. Aaron got up. He went to the shed. He took out an old gasoline canister. He carried it to the car. He checked the hood. Everything was fine. But his hands were shaking. He didn't know who he trusted less, her or himself. Returning, he felt a gaze. Not on his back, on the back of his head. He turned sharply. No one. But on the gate, a strip of fabric hung. Black. As if someone had run their hand over the metal, leaving a mark. He approached. Touched it. Wet. And it smelled, of something sharp. Perfume. Or. He didn't think about it. He went back into the house. Closed the door. And sat down. Buzz came over and buried his muzzle in his knee. And at that moment, Aaron realized that everything he hadn't asked her, now he was asking himself all day long. Night came quickly. No sunset, no beauty. Just, bang, and it was dark. The house creaked. As if it, like its owner, was uncomfortable. The electricity flickered, then seemed to stabilize. Aaron sat on a stool, his hands like ropes. His face was wooden. He picked up the business card. He turned it over. It was blank. Even the number wasn't real, just digits. No code, no signature. People don't lose things like that, they leave them on purpose. Like a trap. He dialed the number. Not because he wanted to. Because the silence had become unbearable. The phone rang. 3 times. Then a click. "You shouldn't have called," said a woman's voice. Calm. As if tired of warnings. "Are you watching me? You interfered. And now you want to realize that it's too late. Where is she?" "We don't give names. But if you want to know how it will end, wait until morning." The connection was lost. Aaron dropped the phone. Not out of fear. Out of helplessness. He knew what doom smelled like. And he could feel it. Right now, inside himself, in this house, in the smell of hot metal coming from the street. He went outside. It was quiet. The moon was dull, like an old coin. Buzz stayed at the door, he didn't come out, as if he knew it wasn't his business. Aaron walked toward the road. He just walked. Without a destination. As if his feet were looking for a way out. He turned toward the hill. There, where her car had appeared yesterday. And he saw a thin object lying on the side of the road, under a bush. He bent down. Picked it up. A badge. Plastic. With faded lettering. The name was erased. Only the emblem remained, a star with wings. Medical. He pressed it to his chest. Closed his eyes. Silence in his head. But no longer calm. Heavy, like a sound that had not yet been heard. And then the earth shook. He turned around. At first, nothing. But then, somewhere in the distance, in the darkness, he heard a low, muffled sound. As if someone were slowly, deliberately driving over gravel. The rumbling grew louder. It was getting closer. Closer and closer. He stood in the middle of the road. Alone. Doing nothing. Just waiting. And at that moment, he realized that everything he had fixed in his life no longer worked. He stood right in the middle of the road. The sand crunched under his feet, but he didn't hear it. All sounds were concentrated into one, the rumble of approaching metal. The cars were not in a hurry. It was not a roll, not a chase, more like a parade. As if someone knew, fear grows more slowly but more strongly if you give it space. First the headlights. 3 pairs, just like in the morning. The light cut into his eyes. He did not back down. Not because he was brave. There was simply nowhere to go. They stopped 3 meters away from him. They didn't turn off the engines. One of them got out. The same one who had been at his house. Only now he was wearing gloves. So they hadn't come to chat. "We asked you not to interfere," he said calmly. Without emotion, like a teacher who was tired of giving bad grades. "I didn't get involved. I was standing on my property. And fixing my damn car. You don't understand. You saved the wrong woman." Aaron swallowed. But not out of fear. Out of rage. Out of helplessness. He looked straight into his eyes. And he understood, these weren't just men in black. These weren't threatening. They just came when the system failed. Like a cleanup crew. "Where is she?" he asked hoarsely. The man nodded silently, and another figure emerged from the car. A woman. Small in stature. Wearing a hood. With her head bowed. She looked up. And something cracked in Aaron's chest. It was her. The one. But, not the one. Her face was gaunt, her eyes empty. As if something had been burned out of her. And only the shell remained. "You shouldn't have," she whispered. "Shut up," one of the escorts snapped, pulling her by the shoulder. Aaron took a step forward. And immediately, a push. One of the men hit him in the ribs. He bent over. But he didn't fall. "You don't understand what game you're playing," the man hissed. "This isn't your story. She started it all herself. And now she wants you to finish it for her." Aaron straightened up. Slowly. With difficulty. "I don't finish other people's stories. I just can't stand it when someone gets broken. Then stay in your house. And don't move." The cars started up again. The woman was pushed back inside. Without resistance. Like a sack. The door slammed shut. A minute later, they were gone. Quietly. No screams, no cries. Only tire tracks, which the wind immediately began to cover up. Aaron stood there, clutching his ribs. And breathed. Rarely. Deeply. Each breath was like a knife. Everything in him screamed, "Leave it. It's not yours." But beneath the pain was another voice, "If not you, then no one." He sat in the kitchen with a piece of ice wrapped in a towel pressed against his side. The ice melted quickly, as did his thoughts. Everything was foggy, but one thing lingered, her eyes. Empty. Tired. And the way she looked at him, as if she hoped he wouldn't show up. And when he did, it was as if everything had only gotten worse. He opened the drawer. He took out a map. Old, torn, smeared with grease. He had kept it from the days when he used to ride around abandoned posts. He marked gas stations, parking lots, places where you could hide or cross the border without being spotted. He no longer needed it, but his hand fell on the edge of the map anyway. His fingers moved along the lines as if it still made sense. He was no hero. He had tried it in his youth and got burned. When he was serving, when he returned, when he tried to save his marriage, his son, himself. Everything failed. He stopped trying to save. He just started living. First in the city. Then in the wilderness. Then inside himself. But today it all seemed to fall apart. Someone had erased the line he had been drawing for years. His personal front line, and it was on the other side. A woman he didn't know. But whose pain he felt more strongly than his own. He remembered how his son had said to him, "You're our repair specialist." "Just not for people," Aaron had replied. And now he was once again faced with something that couldn't be fixed with tools. He got up. He took out his backpack. An old one, from the army storeroom. Inside were a flashlight, bandages, dry rations, and an old jacket that he hated because it still smelled like business trips. He didn't know why. But he knew that sitting still was no longer an option. This evening would consume him if he stayed. It would leave only ashes and residue in its place. He went to the shed. He took a box from under the floorboards. Inside was a shortwave radio. Without an antenna. But he had repaired it a couple of days earlier. Just to keep his hands busy. And now he turned it on. A hissing sound. Then a voice. Male. Low. Calm. Emotionless. Lighthouse. Speak. Aaron held the button but remained silent. He knew that call sign. That's what they used to call the observers in the zone. Those who watched strangers fall but didn't intervene. Are you still listening, Lighthouse? Or did you close your eyes long ago? He didn't know why he said that. But he did. Then he turned off the radio. He went to the car. He started the engine. The old Chevy purred like an old man who had been woken up before his time. Buzz jumped into the passenger seat without invitation. He sat down next to him. He just looked at him silently. He understood everything. There were two of them. Against those who knew how to break people. But the worst thing was the feeling that she might no longer believe that someone would come. He drove along the country road, his headlights picking out the roadside from the darkness like claws. Buzz sat silently in the passenger seat. Not a single bark, not a single growl. The dog sensed that his master had become what he once was, not a man with a barn, but a man who had nothing left to lose. He knew where he was going. Not a destination, a feeling. Behind the hill where the road forked was an old military station. It had been mothballed 15 years ago. But places like that don't get pensions. They just get repurposed. Aaron turned left. The steering wheel creaked. But places like that don't get pensions. They just get repurposed. Aaron turned left. The steering wheel creaked. The dust in the air grew thicker, as if trying to block the road. Behind the bushes was a gap in the fence that he had cut back when he patrolled this area. Back then, it was on orders, now, because he had no choice. He turned off the engine. He took out a flashlight and checked the knife in his pocket. Not a weapon, a ritual. A feeling that at least something was under control. He and Buzz made their way inside. Buzz walked ahead, sometimes stopping, sniffing the ground, then moving on again. Inside the base, it was dark. Not just dark, but thick, like wet sand. All the buildings, barracks, and warehouses were stripped, but not abandoned. Where nature usually consumes everything, here everything was too neat. As if someone had erased everything superfluous. He heard a noise. First a hum, then a voice. A woman's voice. Barely audible, but real. Not on the radio, not in his head. Somewhere nearby. He knew that voice. The same one that whispered, "Thank you," at the roadside. He moved toward the sound. Slowly. With each step, the tension grew. Not fear. Concentration. Behind one of the buildings, there was a light. Dim, coming from the basement. He went down. The door was half open. Inside was a metal room. The walls were gray. A cell. A block. Or just a room that shouldn't have been there. On the floor, she was sitting. Sitting. Hands on her knees. Head bowed. Hair tangled. On her wrist, marks from restraints. He entered. She didn't turn around. Just whispered, "You shouldn't have come." He didn't answer. Just walked over and sat down next to her. "You ruined their game," she said. "Now they'll start a new one. With you." He nodded. No pity, no romance. Just a fact. He took a flask out of his backpack. He handed it to her. She drank, her hands shaking. "Can you leave? If you lead the way." Behind him, there was a click. Metallic. Familiar. Not a door. He stood up. Slowly turned around. A silhouette in the doorway. Black. Calm. With a weapon in his hands. "I told you, Coleman," the same voice. Cold, precise. "This isn't your story." Aaron looked at him. "Now it's mine." The seconds stretched out like strings. The silhouette in the doorway stood calmly, as if he had no intention of shooting. He knew he was in control. Aaron did not. He had only his instincts. And the woman behind him. "You knew," said the man in black. "From the moment she got out of the car. You sensed it all. You just chose to ignore it. As always. And you decided to speak in riddles, as if that makes you smarter." Aaron replied hoarsely. The man smirked. Without a smile. "You're funny. Always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Did you think you could just take her? Walk through all this? Like in a fairy tale? I didn't think at all. You're the one playing out a script. I just couldn't stand by and watch a living person being broken. The silhouette took a step forward. Aaron gripped the knife handle in his pocket. He knew that if he didn't back down now, there would be trouble. And not just words. You don't know anything, the other man continued coldly. This woman is no accident. She crossed paths with the wrong people. We're not hunters. We're cleaners. And you became trash because you decided you could get in the way. He raised his gun. Aaron took a step to the side. Not toward him, but toward the switch. Behind him, on the wall, was a circuit breaker. He remembered. In these blocks, the power always came from a separate panel. Stop. Don't do anything stupid, the man ordered. Do you even know how many stupid things I've done in my life? Aaron smiled. One more, one less, and he pulled the switch. Everything went dark. Darkness fell instantly. Not even darkness, a vacuum. Buzz barked outside. A woman screamed. Then, silence. A step. Another step. The scrape of shoes. A short push. A fall. The light came back on a second later. Black lay on the floor. Unconscious. A gun in his hand, but his fingers had already let go. Aaron stood over him, breathing as if he had just sprinted. He hadn't killed him. He had just hit him. Loudly, honestly, as it should be. He didn't hit him like a fighter. Like a man who had been stripped of his last shred of control. He picked up the gun. Checked it. Loaded. Real. The woman was still sitting on the floor. Looking at him. No longer afraid. Amazed. With some kind of weary faith. We have to go. Before they realize we're alive, he said. Where? I don't know. But not here. He held out his hand to her. She took it. And in that touch there was more life than in everything that had come before. They ran. Not like in the movies, with music and jumping over car hoods. They ran like tired people who had nowhere else to retreat. Their steps were heavy, their breathing ragged. Aaron knew where to go, through the side exit, behind the garages, past the old reservoir. He used to train there, before he lost everything he thought was solid. Buzz walked beside her like a shadow. He didn't rush ahead or lag behind. Only occasionally did he growl at the sounds, something was approaching. Is there, someone there, she asked, almost breathless. Possibly. But they don't have a dog, he said over his shoulder. Behind the hangar was a fence. It had been cut long ago. The edges were singed, the mark of those who know how to work carefully. He let her go ahead, then climbed through himself, scratching his shoulder. Wormwood grew nearby, giving off a bitter smell that for some reason reminded her of childhood. What's your name? He asked when they took cover behind the hill. Emily. A lie. She looked straight at him. No. I just forgot what my real name sounds like. He nodded. Not out of trust, but out of respect. Everyone has names that are only needed in extreme moments. He used to be called Dad. Then just that one. Are you being followed? Or did you start it yourself? I saw something I shouldn't have. Not there. I said something I shouldn't have. Then, people started disappearing. Including my brother. I went to my mother, but instead of the highway, you took the old country road. Yes. That was the logic of it. He looked at her face. Tired, but composed, she wasn't a victim. She was someone who held on as long as she could. Even those sent to break them respected people like that. Down in the valley, he could see his old van. He had hidden it there in case the house burned down or was hit by a storm. The vehicle was rusty, with a mirror falling off, but it was still running. As if someone had erased everything superfluous. He heard a noise. First a hum, Then a voice. A woman's voice. Barely audible, but real. Not on the radio, not in his head. Somewhere nearby. He knew that voice. The same one that whispered, "Thank you," at the roadside. He moved toward the sound. Slowly. When they started the engine, everything inside him tightened. Not out of fear. Out of understanding, there was no turning back. This choice was not for the evening. He had already taken a step, and become part of her story. And as soon as the car sped down the trail, the first shots rang out behind them. The shots did not scare him, they signaled. Like a gong before a fight. Aaron turned around. No one was there. But he knew that behind every bush, behind every turn, there could be someone who played without warning. The van shook like a drunk, the clutch wheezed. Emily held the steering wheel tightly, as if it were the last thing she could hold on to in this world. Her hair was flying, her face was covered in dust, her eyes were bright despite her fatigue. A light flashed behind them, headlights. They had been found. "We can't go any faster," she shouted. "We don't need to go faster. We need to be smarter." He reached under the seat and pulled out an old fire extinguisher. Not as a weapon, but as a trick. He smashed the rear window and, when the van entered the turn, released a stream of foam. Dust, steam, a cloud, a fake accident. Let them think they took a wrong turn. They sped past an old abandoned motel. The "no vacancy" sign was crooked, as if it was tired of lying. Aaron remembered it. He had once stayed there with his son. The boy had asked for a Coke and gum and watched cartoons on the scratched screen. Now it was empty. No people, no memories to return to. The headlights behind them disappeared. Or turned off. Or waited. They stopped on cue. Aaron signaled to stop. Emily turned off the engine. They sat in silence. Only dust settled on the windshield. "Do you have anyone?" he asked. "I only had my mom. Now, probably no one. What about you?" He was silent. "You were in the military, weren't you?" "No. I was someone who tried to look like I was. And then? Then a son. Then a mistake. Then a lawyer. Then this road." She didn't ask any more questions. It wasn't a story. Just a crumb from the past. So as not to go crazy in the present. He went outside and lit a cigarette. The smoke didn't rise, the tobacco was damp. But he kept the gesture in mind. The sky above was ink black, no stars. Everything was as usual. As soon as you make up your mind, darkness covers even the sky. "We can't hide," she said, looking at the glass. "No one is hiding. We're just driving until they lose interest. Or until we run out of road. And if neither happens, then at least we tried." She closed her eyes. And fell asleep for 3 minutes, just like that, abruptly, in tension. He looked at her, and suddenly understood, not because she was innocent. It was because something remained inside her. Something that had almost burned out in him. Light again. Ahead. Far away. But definitely not accidental. He straightened up. Checked his gun. Stood in front of the car. "Get ready," he said. "Now it's going to start all over again." The headlights were approaching quickly. No signals. No conversation. No right to negotiate. It was a hunt in which no one was pretending anymore. Aaron didn't move. He stood on the road, holding his gun down, not threateningly, but clearly. He wouldn't shoot first, but he wouldn't back down either. Emily sat in the car, breathing quietly. She didn't cry or call for help, she just gripped the steering wheel so tightly that her knuckles turned white. When the SUV stopped 10 meters away, they didn't turn off the engine. The door opened like in the movies, slowly, creaking, as if they wanted to get on her nerves. The same man got out. Gray eyes. Gloves. Shoulders that didn't move unnecessarily. "Aaron," he said calmly, "you know it doesn't work that way. You're not the kind of person who saves others. You are the one who survived, and remained silent." "I've changed my mind," Aaron replied. "What makes you think I'll stay in this role forever?" "Because you've always been in it. Because you broke down when no one was there to hold you back. Because you're not a warrior. You're a mechanic." "So what?" He took a step forward. "When you die every day, it doesn't matter who you are on the nameplate." The man smiled. He raised his hand as a signal. 2 more men got out of the car. One was holding a stun gun, the other something that looked like handcuffs. But there was no confidence in their faces. They didn't expect a man in a t-shirt with a dog to stand in front of them as if he were still serving somewhere where the law is what you carry on your shoulders. "If she comes with us, you'll stay alive," said the gray-eyed man. "It's a fair price." "You call that fair? She knew where she was going with this, and you're just a stranger." "No one is, just," Aaron's voice was hoarse, but it sounded like armor. He raised his gun. Not to shoot. To show that he had seen good people die. And he would not let those who had at least tried to become better die. The man shook his head. And suddenly, took a step closer. "All right, old man. Let's see how much you've got left in you." He came almost close enough to touch. Aaron didn't back down. But he didn't shoot either. They stood face to face. "You won't shoot. Because you still have a conscience," said the man. "And you only have your job," replied Aaron. "A second." "Silence, will you drive?" "I can handle it." "Good. I'll cover you. If anyone follows us, step on it and don't slow down until you see the ocean." "Are we going to the ocean?" "No. It's a metaphor." She smiled. Nervously, but for the first time, lively, when they started the engine, everything inside him tightened. Not out of fear. Out of understanding, there was no turning back. This choice was not for the evening. He had already taken a step, and become part of her story. And as soon as the car sped down the trail, the first shots rang out behind them. The shots did not scare him, they signaled. Like a gong before a fight. The gray-eyed man took a step back. Aaron didn't move. He just stood there. Until the man disappeared into the darkness. The police moved confidently, but without haste. People like that never run, they come when the others have nothing left to say. One of them, silent, with a sergeant's stripes on his shoulder, signaled for Aaron to lower his weapon. He didn't argue. He just put the gun on the hood. Without a word. He's not a hero. He's a survivor. "The call came in on the emergency channel," said one of the officers. "Which one of you?" "Me," said Emily. Her voice was dry, but not broken. She held herself together. Too well, even. They took her aside and took her statement. Quickly, by the book, but without rudeness. No one asked unnecessary questions. Everyone understood, this wasn't the kind of story that needed protocol, it needed time. Aaron stayed by the car. Buzz sat nearby, quiet, as if he knew that as long as his owner was there, he could just wait. An officer approached him. "Do you know who she is?" "No. And maybe it's better that way. She was under federal protection. She slipped up a couple of months ago. The information is classified. But now you're involved." Aaron smiled dryly. "I've been involved since I gave her water." "Something tells me you've been involved since you left the system. You just didn't notice." He didn't answer. He just nodded wearily. All he wanted to do was lie down. In the dirt, on the hood, under the car, it didn't matter. Just lie down and disappear for a couple of hours. The officer fell silent. Then he took out a piece of paper and a pen and wrote down a number. If you suddenly need anything. Or if they come back, not the black cars, but those who will be quieter than us. Call. Got it. They left. Without sirens. Without noise. They simply disappeared. Just as they had arrived. What remained was the van, the old man, the dog, the woman who had become a shadow again, and the road where it all began. You need to leave, Aaron said, without looking up. I will leave. For a long time. Forever. He nodded. Thank you, she said. You're welcome. You knew you could die. I didn't know. I just decided it didn't matter anymore. She came closer. Kissed him on the cheek. No romance. Just human. And she walked to the car. And he stayed. Watching the van melt into the dust. Buzz came up and nudged his hand with his snout. Well, he said. It's just us again. He sat on the porch for a long time. Not because he was tired, but because he felt empty. It was as if everything that had kept him warm inside had drained away over the last 2 days. All that remained was a shell that remembered where it hurt, but didn't ask why. The house stood as before. Dust on the windowsill, an old mug on the table, a calendar that no one had turned. Everything was as before. Except for him. He walked through the rooms. Slowly, aimlessly. Like a museum of things that had long since ceased to mean anything. He took a photograph off the wall. The one with him and his son. Back then, he still had everything, a family, a uniform, faith that life could be planned. Now, they were just faces staring out from the past. He didn't cry. He hadn't cried in a long time. It's not that men aren't allowed to cry, it's just that at some point, tears become a luxury. And luxury is not affordable for those who repair cars in the wilderness. He put the photograph in a drawer. Not because he was hiding it. He simply put it aside. Like a memory that no longer needed to be revisited every day. There was a piece of paper on the table. A pen was nearby. He sat down. And wrote, if someone suddenly appears on this road again, don't ask their name. Just help them. Sometimes that's enough to keep someone alive. He didn't sign it. Because he didn't need to. He turned off the light. He patted Buzz. He lay down by the door, as always. But now, closer. As if he understood, from this day on, home was once again a place where he could stay. Outside the window, silence. Not threatening. Real. Sometimes changes don't shout. They just stay. With you. Forever. Do you think he did the right thing by letting her into his life? Write the word action in the comments if you believe that even simple kindness can change everything. We read every response.